What if everything you've ever been taught about money, about saving, about what really matters at the end, what if it's all like completely upside down?
That's a pretty challenging thought to start with, isn't it?
Yeah, it really shakes things up.
We're so, geared towards saving, accumulating.
Mhm.
Maybe we miss the point sometimes.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at this really fascinating perspective from Bill Perkins' book, Die with Zero.
Right. And just to be clear, this isn't about being, irresponsible with money.
No, not at all. It's actually about optimizing.
Yeah.
Optimizing your life for, well, maximum fulfillment.
Finding the best way to use your resources, your time, your energy.
So we're going to challenge some of those common ideas about wealth and time, legacy even.
Yeah.
Maybe help you rethink things a bit.
And the book itself, it's got these guiding principles, right? But also lots of real stories, anecdotes,
Yeah, and even some math, some quantitative thinking behind it.
all aimed at helping you allocate what Perkins calls your life energy. That's a key term.
Okay, so let's jump in. Rule number one, he says, is maximize your positive life experiences.
And he starts with a really powerful story, Aaron and John, back in 2008.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, John got this terrible diagnosis, a rare, fast-growing cancer, only months left.
Hmm.
Aaron was a successful lawyer, and they were just floored.
Understandably.
And what's striking is, even before Perkins suggested it, she decided. She just quit her job.
Wow. Just like that.
Yeah, to focus entirely on family time. Simple things, park visits, movies, video games, picking the kids up from school.
Those everyday moments.
Exactly. And looking back, despite all the trauma, she said she was so incredibly glad she did it. So glad she quit.
That really hits home. And it leads into this core idea in the book, right? The memory dividends.
Memory dividends, yeah, this is a great concept. The idea is that experiences, unlike, say, a fancy watch,
Right.
they actually gain value over time as you remember them, as they become part of who you are.
So experiences are like appreciating assets. That feels kind of backwards to how we normally think.
It totally is. But think about it. He tells this story about Jason Rufo,
Yeah.
early 20s, making maybe $18,000 a year.
Okay.
He borrows 10 grand from a loan shark, no less.
Seriously.
Go
Uh-huh.
backpacking in Europe for 3 months. High
Oh.
interest, everything. But years later, he says those experiences were priceless. He wouldn't trade them for any amount of money.
That's the memory dividend right there.
Absolutely. Powerful stuff.
And it connects to that old fable, the ant and the grasshopper.
Right. Perkins isn't saying be the grasshopper exactly. He's saying maybe the grasshopper needs to save a little. And the ant definitely needs to learn to live a little more. Find that balance.
So find the balance, which leads to rule number two, invest in experiences early.
Yeah, because of those memory dividends we just talked about, the earlier you have an experience.
The longer it pays out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this idea of the fulfillment curve.
Yeah.
You get more total fulfillment if you time experiences for when you can best enjoy them. Usually that's earlier rather than later.
That makes intuitive sense. He mentions a friend, Polly, right, who got caught up in the numbers for a vacation home
Yeah, Pauly was all about the return on equity, the financial side.
and missed the return on experience.
Completely missed the point. The whole reason you get a vacation place is for the experiences, right?
Yeah.
The ultimate goal of earning money is to spend it on things that make life better, on experiences.
Otherwise, why bother earning it?
Right. What's the point?
Okay, so if experiences are key, why don't we prioritize them more? The book talks about the perils of oversaving.
Oh, definitely. This is a huge part of it. He tells the story of John Arnold, the king of natural gas, super successful trader.
Right.
He set a goal, make $15 million, then quit.
Okay, a clear goal.
But then he hit it, and the goalpost moved to $25 million, then $100 million, then $4 billion.
Whoa. Why?
Well, Perkins suggests he worked way past the point of optimal utility, where the money stops adding real happiness. It just became a habit, maybe even.
The thrill of making it.
Yet the thrill of making money exceeds the thrill of actually living, as the book puts it. It's like an addiction for some.
And if you die with all that money left over, that's the wasted life energy you mentioned.
Precisely. He uses Elizabeth's story. Died with $130,000 unspent.
Which doesn't sound like that much compared to Arnold, but
But when you calculate it back, that represented 6,646 hours
Yeah.
she worked unnecessarily.
wow. Break that down.
That's over 2.5 years of 50-hour work weeks, working for free, essentially, because she never got the fulfillment from that money.
That's sobering. And is this common? Do people generally die with money left?
The data suggests yes, overwhelmingly so,
Oh.
especially in the U.S. Median net worth actually keeps rising for people in their mid-70s and beyond.
Keeps rising, even after retirement.
Yep. For ages 65, 74, median net worth is around $224,000. For 75 plus, it's even higher, like $264,800. People are saving way past the point where they'll likely spend it.
They're not decumulating, as the financial planners say.
Exactly. There was a study of retirees who started with $500,000 or more. 20 years later, the median amount they'd spent was just 11.8%.
So nearly 90% still sitting there after 2 decades of retirement.
Yeah, it's a massive blind spot. We're trained to accumulate, accumulate, accumulate.
And we forget the spending part, which ties into those go-go, slow-go, no-go years of retirement, right?
Absolutely. You retire, you're healthy, you want to travel, do things that is go-go.
Then you slow down a bit.
Slow go. And eventually, health or mobility limits things significantly no-go.
And spending reflects that.
It does. Interestingly, even though healthcare costs rise, overall average spending drops with age. From about $65,000 a year for the 55-64 group down to $42,000 for the 75-plus group.
So people just aren't spending it later in life.
Largely, no.
But hang on, what about the fear? The fear of running out, especially with healthcare costs. That feels very real.
It is a real fear and totally valid. But Perkins uses this analogy. Saving for catastrophic, unpredictable healthcare costs is like buying alien robot invasion insurance.
Okay. Explain that one.
The point is, the potential costs can be so astronomically high, think $500,000 a year for some cancer treatments,
Right.
that no amount of savings available to most people could possibly cover the absolute worst-case scenario. Trying to self-insure against that level of risk is often futile and leads to massive oversaving.
So just hoarding cash isn't the best strategy for that specific fear.
Probably not the most efficient, no. He suggests things like annuities might be a better tool for managing longevity risk, the risk of outliving your money.
Because they pool the risk.
Exactly. It's a way to guarantee income for life, which can alleviate that fear more effectively than just hoping your pile of cash is big enough for any possible disaster.
So what stops us from acting more rationally then, if the logic is there?
Perkins points to two main culprits: autopilot and fear.
Autopilot, like just keep saving because that's what we've always done.
Yeah. And fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of running out prevents us from making deliberate choices about spending and enjoying life.
Which seems like a good transition to redefining legacy, because the first fear people raise is often, but what about the kids?
Right. The default is save it all, leave a big inheritance.
But Perkins challenges that.
He really does. He points out, okay, when do people typically get that inheritance in the U.S.? The median age is around 60.
This is steep. Okay.
And the question is 60 the age where that money has the maximum impact? Helping buy a first house, paying for college, raising young children? Probably not.
It's often too late for those big life moments.
Exactly. He tells the story of Virginia Cullen. She really struggled financially when she was younger, kind of edge of poverty, even though her parents had money. So she learned from that. Now, she gives money to her kids much earlier, between ages 29 and 43, when it can really help them, sooner rather than later.
That makes a lot of sense. Did he research the best age?
He did this informal Twitter poll. Asked people the ideal age to get an inheritance. Over half said between 26 and 35.
Interesting. Young enough to really benefit, but old enough to be, hopefully, a bit sensible with it.
Right. It balances maturity with the ability to enjoy the benefits while you're young and healthy.
And this shifts the idea of legacy itself, doesn't it?
Totally. Perkins argues the real legacy isn't just the cash. It's the shared experiences, especially when your kids are growing up. Money should be a tool to enable those experiences.
Okay, what about charity? Some people save to leave a lot to charity. He talks about Sylvia Bloom.
Ah, yes, the legal secretary. Lives very frugally, died with $8 million, which went to scholarships and charity.
Which sounds admirable on the surface.
It does. But Perkins argues it's actually a terrible inefficiency.
How so? The money still went to good causes.
Because, as he puts it, people who were needy during her lifetime did not benefit from her largesse. You can only be generous when you're alive. Giving after death isn't generosity, it's just estate distribution.
You can't be generous when you're dead. That's blunt.
It is, but it makes you think. Your chosen charity could likely use the money now more than decades from now.
He holds up Chuck Feeney as the counterexample.
Yes, the giving while living billionaire. Made billions, gave away over $8 billion during his lifetime, lives simply now. His view is the causes need the money now.
And that applies even if you're not a billionaire. give sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Maximize the impact of your generosity just like you maximize your life experiences.
Okay, this brings us to balancing it all. Health, time, money. It sounds like a juggling act.
It is. And Perkins admits he swung the pendulum himself from being super thrifty, almost like a fire movement guy,
Financial independence, retire early.
right, to being maybe too spendthrift for a while. The key, he realized, is finding the right balance for you and recognizing that balance shifts over time.
So those simple rules like the 50-30-20 budget rule.
They're too static. He argues the optimal balance will vary from person to person and will shift as your age and income change. It needs to be dynamic.
Now, something you mentioned earlier really stood out, the importance of health.
Yeah, this is crucial. Perkins calls health the single biggest factor affecting lifetime fulfillment. More than free time, even more than money.
More than money. Wow.
And it compounds. He says, even a small permanent reduction in health amounts to a large reduction in the person's lifetime fulfillment score.
So investing in your health early pays massive dividends down the line.
Huge dividends. He talks about Stephen Stern, a chiropractor who saw patients his age losing abilities.
And decided that wasn't going to be him.
Right. At 59, he totally transformed his health, got into peak health for his age. Now he's summiting mountains with his daughter.
That's amazing. And the flip side is missing out.
Definitely. The examples like Chris, the 69-year-old, struggling to swim 30 yards to the soggy dollar bar.
Yeah.
Or Perkins himself realizing if he wanted to try wakeboarding age 50 was probably now or never. Your physical capacity declines.
So investing in health isn't just about preventing disease. It makes everything more enjoyable.
Everything. Skiing, sure, but also just walking upstairs without getting winded. It multiplies the value of all your time and money.
Okay, health is key. What about the time-money trade-off?
Big one.
Yeah.
Especially in those middle years, say 30s, 40s, 50s, when you often have more money but feel like you have zero time.
The squeeze.
Right. The advice is use your money to buy back your time.
Like the laundry example.
Perfect example. If you earn, say, $40 an hour after tax, and doing laundry takes 2 hours, that's $80 of your time value.
Okay.
If a wash and fold service costs $50, it's a no-brainer. You're essentially buying 2 hours of your life back for $50, time you value at $80. You can use that time for something you actually enjoy.
Trade money for time. Got it.
This seems to lead into thinking more strategically about time itself. Rule number 7, time bucket your life.
Yeah, this came from an experience with his daughter, realizing she'd suddenly outgrown a favorite movie, Pooh's Heffalump movie. And it hit him that these phases, especially with kids, they don't have sharp end dates. They just fade away. You don't realize it's the last time until it's past.
Exactly. And recognizing that finite nature.
Yeah.
Putting things into time buckets, like this is the decade for young kids, this is the time for adventure travel. It makes you appreciate the present more.
Like those college students who are happier when they focused on savoring their remaining time before moving.
Precisely. It makes you more intentional. He gives his own example. Splurging on a 45th birthday trip to St. Bart's.
Why 45, not the big 50?
Because his parents' health was already declining. He realized waiting might mean they couldn't share it with him. It was about timing the experience correctly, not hitting an arbitrary milestone.
Which connects directly to rule number 8. Know your peak.
Your net worth peak. This is a big one.
Not a dollar amount, but a date.
Yes, a specific date after which you should ideally stop accumulating and start strategically spending down your assets to maximize that lifetime fulfillment we talked about.
Assuming you've covered your basic survival needs, of course.
Absolutely. This
Yep.
is for people past that survival threshold.
And when is that peak, typically?
The modeling in the book suggests for most people, it's somewhere between 45 and 60.
Why then?
It's that intersection of your earnings likely peaking, but before your health and ability to enjoy experiences starts declining significantly. Waiting longer, he says, leads to suboptimal fulfillment. You die with too much left over.
So what about someone like Andy? Wealthy guy, loves his job. Should he just quit at 60?
Not necessarily quit if he loves it, but he should recognize he's likely past his optimal accumulation peak. He should absolutely start spending more, giving more now, rather than just letting the pile grow indefinitely.
Maybe cut back hours, phased retirement.
Those are great options, the book suggests. Shift the balance. Don't get seduced by money into working longer than is optimal for your life. Those missed experiences don't come back.
Okay, last rule. Be bold, not foolish. Rule number 9. Take your biggest risks when you have little to lose.
Yeah, think young Mark Cuban, selling trash bags, running a pub, starting Micro Solutions.
He hustled.
He did. And he felt those weren't huge risks because, as he said, He had nothing to lose. His downside was minimal.
Contrast that with physical risk.
Right. Jumping off the garage roof is maybe dumb, but okay as a kid. At 50, the potential downside, broken hip, serious injury, is way higher.
Consequences are bigger.
Much bigger.
Right.
And the book argues your go-go years for taking big life risks, career changes, starting businesses, major moves are shorter than you think. Waiting until retirement is often a massive blunder.
But fear holds people back, that magnified downside you mentioned.
Totally. People imagine worst-case scenarios ending up homeless that are often completely unrealistic for their actual situation.
So how do you counter that?
You quantify the fear. Remember Christine, the unhappy 25-year-old?
Yeah, she was encouraged to just quit.
Because her realistic downside was, what? Maybe waiting tables for a bit? Very low risk for potentially huge life improvement. She had little to lose.
And the job move example, paying $70 comes more across the country.
Quantify the fear of losing touch. Okay, how much would first-class tickets cost to fly back regularly? Maybe $10K, $20.
So you're effectively paying $50,000 a year for the comfort of not moving.
When you frame it like that, it forces you to confront the real cost of inaction, the real cost of comfort.
Perkins did this himself, right? Moving to Texas.
Yeah, at 25. Move for a risky trading job. High potential upside. Pretty low downside for him at that age. Worth the risk for a potentially more meaningful, richer life.
And even if the risk doesn't pay off financially.
Even negative experiences from taking calculated risks can become positive memory dividends later on. You learn, you grow.
Wow, okay, that's a lot to chew on. We've really taken apart the standard advice about money, saving, legacy.
It really flips the script. Maximizing your bank account is definitely not the same as maximizing your life.
The core message seems to be about being conscious, deliberate.
Yeah, consciously shaping your life. Using your time, your health, your money, all finite resources to get the most actual living, the most fulfillment squeezed out of your time here.
Prioritizing experiences, making choices instead of running on autopilot.
Challenging those fears, understanding how health and time and money interact dynamically throughout your life.
And if people want a tool to help with the numbers side,
there's the Die with Zero app mentioned in the book. It aims to take your personal situation, age, income, health, goals, and help calculate some of those optimal paths. You can find it at diewithzerobook.com.
Good resource. So, as we wrap up, a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah, maybe this. If you could actually put a value on every experience, like the book suggests, and if you knew, really knew, how many healthy, active go-go years you realistically had left, how would that change what you do with your next dollar, or even just your next hour starting today?